Welcome to Rebuild October, a series where we rebuild a new team every day across the month of October. So, whether you're looking for your favorite team or just generally curious as to how every team should approach the offseason, then this is the series for you. With that being said, let's jump right into the video. As you can see from the war by position, the Mariners have their clear strengths and weaknesses. Raleigh, Rodriguez, and Arozarena continue to be some of the best of their position group, while third base, right field, and weirdly enough pitching plagued this team in 2025. With some slight tweaks to this team, they could easily be one of the most dangerous teams in baseball. However, before we can talk about adding to this roster, we have to talk about the impending free agents, and the Mariners have a big trio that need attending to. Raw stat-wise, Eugenio Suarez was the most impactful of the bunch after hammering 49 homers with an 824 OPS. He did most of his damage in Arizona prior to the deadline, and even in the years prior in Seattle, he never really hit his ceiling as a player. While he would give the Mariners a nice floor at the position, he'll likely leave town to maximize his talents and earnings potential. Josh Naylor, on the other hand, looked even better in Seattle, posting an 831 OPS for the Mariners. On the season, he clubbed 20 homers and 92 RBIs and accumulated 3.1 WAR. If the Mariners can hold on to the left-handed slugger, it would do a lot for lengthening this lineup beyond the usual suspects and give them an above-average player at the position. How about the season that Jorge Polanco just put together? 26 homers and 78 RBIs a year after his worst full season of his career. I don't know what adjustments he made in the offseason to get right, but they were the correct ones. And while the Mariners would probably love to re-sign him at that $8 million player option, they'll probably have to go into free agency and get him there. The decision the Mariners will have to make will be over Andres Munoz and his club option for $6 million. This might be one of the easiest decisions of the entire Rebuild October series because Munoz is just incredible, and to have one of the best closers in baseball at $7 million is a steal. However, the other offseason decision the Mariners need to make is just as easy in the opposite direction. Mitch Garver has not been the player the Mariners hoped for when they acquired him prior to the 2024 season, and with better talent already making it to the majors, this team just doesn't have a use for him. And then the final free agent is Caleb Ferguson. Ultimately, he was pretty good in Seattle, but will be lost to free agency. For prospects to consider, this team was about as loaded as they come, and there are a few better in the prospect world than Cole Emerson. At 20 years old, Emerson was able to sneak into AAA by the end of the season and is quickly putting himself on the MLB radar for next year. He's a contact over power type that has the athleticism to stick it short, but will likely be a long-term third baseman. Last season, we saw him hit for 16 homers and 78 RBIs with an 841 OPS split across high A, double A, and triple A. He's very impressive for his age. However, with just 6 games at triple A, I need to see him prove himself more there before I can move him to the majors. Joining him on the list of prospects to consider for 2026 is Lazaro Montes, who is simply a masher. In 131 games split between high A and double A, Montes hit 32 homers and 89 RBIs with an 858 OPS. At a fresh 21 years old, Montes doesn't really have a defensive home. He's a physical specimen at 6'5", 210 pounds, but lacks the speed to be the outfielder that he is tagged with. Without a transition to another position, there's a lot of DH in his future, but if he keeps mashing, that's just okay. Then there's the prospect the Mariners fans have already seen in Harry Ford. Ford has put together some really impressive numbers, especially considering that he is a catcher. In 2025, he posted 16 homers and 74 RBIs in AAA, and has seen a pretty even split between walks and strikeouts. Defensively, he is a decent catcher, but with Raleigh locking down the position, he'll have to find a different home. They've been transitioning him in the minor leagues to some first base, and even gave him a look in the corner outfield, but ultimately, he'll be the DH for this team in 2026. And the final name to consider is Michael Arroyo. Arroyo is a bat-first second baseman, and he has been delivering on that. In 2025, he had an 834 OPS with 17 homers and 54 RBIs split between high A and double A. He had some struggles at double A, so he could very easily start next season there, meaning his timeline would be very late into the season, barring a monster year. However, for as bright as the future looks in Seattle, the roster will look much the same, returning Raleigh behind the dish, Crawford at short, Arozarena in left field, Rodriguez in center, and Canzone in right field. Leo Rivas will return to the roster as an additional infielder, Victor Robles as a fourth outfielder, with Luke Raley coming off the bench. That leaves a gaping hole at third base, and with that, the Mariners will explore the international market and grab Kazuma Okamoto. Okamoto is an absolute masher in the Japanese league, having a stretch from 2018 to 2023 where he didn't hit less than 30 homers. Defensively, he has 2 gold gloves at third base, but realistically, you are looking at a long-term first baseman. However, the Mariners will look to squeeze another year or two at third. There are some question marks about his stats versus high velocity, but as he sees more of it in the States, I'm sure he'll adjust. As for the final position player, the Mariners will need to get another catcher with Harry Ford as the primary DH, and with that, they'll turn to Elias Diaz. At this point in his career, Diaz isn't much to talk about. The offense and defense aren't particularly great, but he just simply fills out the position. The rotation will remain unchanged despite some rare struggles in 2025, Wu and Gilbert at the top with Luis Castillo staying in the middle despite some trade rumors, and George Kirby and Bryce Miller looking to bounce back at the back end. Then we'll also return Matt Brash, Eduardo Bazardo, Gabe Spire, and Carlos Vargas. That leaves 3 spots left to fill with middle relief options, and with that the Mariners will go out and grab Scott Barlow. Barlow has long been one change away from being one of the best relievers in baseball, and that is with the walks. He consistently walks way too many batters to be elite, but everything else is very, very good, and getting to pitch in Seattle has never hurt anyone. Joining him in the bullpen will be Gregory Soto. Soto is another reliever that does a lot of things very well. He strikes out a fair amount of batters, avoids barrels, and gets a good amount of contact onto the ground. The walks are a little high, but nothing outrageous, and overall, he's just a fine reliever that should fit well in Seattle. And then for the final reliever, we have to bring back Paul Sewald. We saw the way he was watching that celebration. They have to bring him back to join in. In all reality, he still has some redeeming qualities with his good strikeout to walk rate and gets a good amount of swing and miss. His flyball heavy approach plays well into Seattle and would be such a welcome addition back to this roster. And that's going to do it for the video. The Mariners were so close to making the World Series, and I feel so bad for their fans, but they're just a step or two away, and this rebuild hopefully did that for them to really get them over the edge and make it to that elusive World Series finally.